Today's LEGO City update is going to be massive. First of all, we start with the basketball court, then we'll head over to the rural area in order to prepare the next big city expansion, and then I'll also show you the current lighting progress. But first things first, let's dive right into the basketball court. I've constructed this using the SNOT building technique, studs not on top, meaning all bricks are placed sideways. This has the big advantage of allowing me to create these thin court markings using the 90-degree angled plates. The challenging part was to build the half circle on the court's edge. For the colors, I now decided to use sand green for the inner court part, and then for the outer area, I used sand blue. These colors simply harmonize extremely well, and luckily there were no buildings nearby that I had the facade built out of these colors. I've now simply used plates in order to connect the court and prevent it from dislodging, and now, after that was done, it was time for the most enjoyable part, and you might have guessed it, it's time for storytelling and details. I sort of fell in love with these little slightly bent transparent pins, and in this case I once again used them for adding movement, even though this is a static scene and it simply looks like these two basketball players have just jumped up into the air. One guy is blocking the other one from scoring, and there also you can see the basketball hoop itself. Initially I added the minifigures without this little bent transparent piece, but with it just adds so much realism and life to this little scene. Of course, what cannot be missed are these little fence pieces on the outside of the court, especially around the area where shots are being taken. And although these grid pieces I'm using have extremely limited purposes, in this case I thought they fitted quite nicely. I've then also added some lights on top in order to have night games as well, and then after I've added some vegetation in order to blend everything in with the nearby factory. This now allows me to move on to the next part, which is once again another quite important part, adding vegetation in order to separate the tram line from the basketball court. And I simply chose in this area to cover everything up with two different types of green, and then for the third color I used in this area, the trees are built out of dark green or earth green, however you want to call it, and then this really rounds off this corner, in combination with, of course, having added little printed flat tiles in order to tell more stories, and most importantly, everything is covered up in tiles, as well as a few cracks towards the transition onto the old factory. Now let's move on to the next part of today's video, which is the modification of the bridge I have to make. You guys commented all sorts of different bridges I should take inspiration from, and one thing I read repeatedly is that I should have one main carrier cable connected to this large arch on top. It basically holds up the bridge via these other cables I've connected in a 90-degree angle to the rest of the bridge. Moving on to a completely different region of my LEGO City I've honestly neglected over the past few weeks and months even. It's time to continue in the more rural area with these half-timbered houses. First of all, I want to integrate the church more into the village, also on top of this little hill. Therefore, this is now the basic scaffolding in order to elevate the church. And the reason I'm continuing to build in this area with the half-timbered houses is because, as you might have noticed over the past few updates, I'm slowly but surely starting to run out of space, especially in the main part of the city, and therefore within the next few updates it's time for the great city expansion, and therefore I want to finally complete this village I've been working on for over 3 years now in total, in combination with my old layout. This is now what the church will look like as soon as it's integrated. Of course, in order to blend everything, at the moment everything is very blocky and Minecrafty, and therefore I first of all used plates in order to get rid of these very sharp edges. You can see that right there. And next up, of course, it's time for a lot of vegetation. In front of the church I decided to add a large field of these beautiful white flowers, and then on the sides and the very back of the city I simply used these large leaves in order to cover up all the sharp edges. Then the church is simply slid back into place, really satisfying. Also that I can simply remove it in order to add lighting at some point. And now, in order to further integrate it, of course it's time to add some trees in the background. These are the bit simpler trees I'm adding in my city, also smaller, which makes sense with the perspective. And then on the right hand side of these hills in the background I'm adding pine trees, because I thought that also adds another type of tree I haven't added too much over the past updates. Now the most important question is, how exactly am I going to continue the village? I was now thinking about maybe simply using this one house I removed 2 minutes ago when I started to integrate the church. That might actually fit towards the end of this small village and then also completing it. The other possibility would be to add a giant castle, because that would also fit the style on the left-hand side of the village. But now it's once again time to switch back to the main part of the LEGO City, because we still have quite a lot of things to do. First of all, you guys wanted me to finally start adding details to this empty section on the upper platform of the city, and what I've therefore decided to start off with is a small advertising column. And now this is where it gets a bit more complicated because of the round structure. I can't use anything brick built. Normally I always prefer to have brick built solution instead of adding stickers in order to add details, but in this case there you can see the base structure of this advertising column is as round as possible, and therefore I've also decided to use completely round pieces. And in the end, I'm simply going to cover everything up with little advertisements I'll custom print for the Lego City that also then fits to the other stories. But when it comes to the basic design as well as the size of this advertising column, I'm really satisfied with how that looks so far. And now immediately the next question for you. Simply comment your ideas for certain advertisements I could add to that down in the comments below. And another thing we have to take a look at is, of course, the building I've added last video still misses an interior. And this is also important because I'm going to add lighting in just a bit. First of all, let's start with the little bathroom on the right-hand side. I know this is now not a lot of space. I've only added a small sink, toilet, as well as a shower. And then this completes the very, very small, to be honest, bathroom. In the main room of this building, I've now decided to add a kitchen and then these beautiful round curved stairs leading up to the next floor. I'll honestly probably decide to add more of these curved staircases because they simply save so much space in these smaller buildings right there. For the next floor, I've also once again added a separate room. The reason for that is because when I light everything up, I want to have different windows lit up and others dark, and then this switches back and forth. And this now also then leads me to how exactly I've installed the lighting. There you can see this hollow space underneath the future building I'm adding. And then on the back side of the building, I've simply drilled a hole into the plate, and there all the cables are run down so you don't see any of the cable mess. In the end, this is obviously the most important part. Also, I finally started to install the street lanterns, and that now leads me to the transition from daylight to nighttime. And so far, I'm absolutely satisfied with the start of this. And now the most important but most complicated thing I still haven't shown you. Here you can see how everything transitions from daylight to nighttime, and then this is the plan. My brother has been working on this for the last 2 months and I haven't shown anything. During the transition, all the lights will be switched on and off automatically over the course of 15 minutes when it then switches to daylight and nighttime and back and forth. This is the entire operation at the moment. Super complicated experiments my brother is running at the moment in order to have everything work automatically. I'll of course keep you updated when it comes to the lighting, but now one last thing I still need to show you are of course the 2 before and after pictures of today's video. First of all with the basketball court, and then secondly there you can see the church I've added. Although adding these hills in the background isn't too complicated building technique wise, but there's always a lot of building progress, and well, that's also a good part. Next video I'll of course continue building on the upper platform where the empty space is remaining, probably with a small fountain or something. And with that being said, that's it for today's video. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you again in the next one.